Hello and welcome to CANNAMAntv. In this episode I talked to Dan Collins, a cannabis activist, writer and the founder of Hemp, an Edinburgh-based company who are the first not-for-profit, social enterprise-run CBD business in Scotland. I sit down with Dan to discuss CBD, hemp, the endocannabinod system and why cannabis is important in today's society. Make sure and like, subscribe and stick around until the end so you don't miss out on the end of episode CANNAMAN cartoon. Now then, let's talk cannabis. Hi Dan, thanks for talking with me.
Thank you very much.
So what made you become invested in the hemp and CBD industry?
I have personal experience. I've always been interested in cannabis, not just as a recreational product, but also as a health product. A little bit of a backstory. My dad had multiple sclerosis, so growing up I was aware of neurological disease. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, I heard Prince Charles, of all people, on TV, speaking to a group of MS patients and recommending that they try cannabis. He'd heard it was the best thing for it. Being a curious child, I asked my dad, what's cannabis? And he told me that it's a drug, it's illegal, and I could get in a lot of trouble for using it. So that was my initial exposure to cannabis. That it was something that supposedly could help people, but it was also illegal. I didn't try cannabis myself until I was in my late teens, about 18, 19 years old, and used it recreationally for years. This kind of continued on, a good 10 years passed. In 2016, my dad's illness accelerated. One of the things with multiple sclerosis is that it's a progressive disease, so it only ever really goes in one direction. And my dad's disease accelerated rapidly, and he experienced quite a big flare-up. Essentially, he sustained quite a lot of brain damage because of the MS and was hospitalised for 2.5 years. During that 2.5 years, he wasn't really responsive, he wasn't able to communicate or talk, and it was a very painful experience for myself, for my mother, my brother, and my whole family. It was really difficult watching my dad kind of slip away like this. It was especially annoying for me because I knew that cannabis was something that could have been of benefit to me. I mean, the MS Society have been campaigning for access to medical cannabis for decades. So it was something that irked me, that this was something my dad could have made use of and he wouldn't have had to die at the age of 57. It was during that process that I started using CBD myself. When my dad was in hospital, my anxiety level was really, really high, and I heard that CBD was quite good. I was already using cannabis regularly, but I wasn't using CBD. When I started introducing CBD into my routine, after a few weeks I started to notice a positive change in my outlook and my experience, and within a couple of months I'd already started planning a business. I didn't really know what shape that business would take, but eventually someone that I knew floated the idea to me that I should start a social enterprise, that I could take cannabis cannabis business, but turn it into something that is really deliberately and focused and conscious about helping people first and foremost. So, basically, to sum it up, I had a really positive experience with CBD. I've always been a big fan of cannabis, and I want as many other people to have as good an experience with cannabis as possible. So what I did was take my own skills, my own experience, and set up a little shop where people can come, they can ask questions, they can get honest information, and they can have a choice of different types of CBD products, knowing that they come from a trustworthy source.
What do you mean that you are the first social enterprise CBD shop in Scotland? What is a social enterprise?
So a social enterprise is a type of business that is not run for profit, but rather is run to benefit people. So a social enterprise, broadly speaking, is a business that contributes to the well-being of individuals, communities, or the environment. And personally, I believe that hemp and cannabis can quite obviously benefit individuals, the environment, and communities. So it seems quite obvious to me that cannabis should be, a social enterprise sort of structure is very applicable to cannabis. Essentially what it means on a day-to-day thing is that any money the shop makes gets put back in to helping people. And we've seen in places like America and Canada the amount of money that is made through cannabis. And imagine, instead of that money just going into shareholders and going into fancy watches and nice shirts, imagine if that money went into helping people. Imagine if the profits of this incredible industry went back to the people who built it. What if it went back to the sick, the sad, and the sore people who use cannabis as a healthcare product? And one of the things I like talking about is that, there's not really a clear line between recreational and medical cannabis, because most people who use cannabis recreationally or for fun also report positive health outcomes that are incidental to their intended use. Similarly, there are people who use cannabis as a medicine but actually quite enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Essentially what we want to do is be a positive voice, offer a balanced opinion based on science, based on information that's coming from professionals around the world, and try and give people that kind of peace of mind that what they're getting is a genuine product, and also equipping them with the information. Like, one of the things that, like, as a social enterprise, one of our goals is to raise awareness of not just of the potential for cannabis and hemp, but also the role of the endocannabinoid system. Now, the endocannabinoid system is a part of your nervous system, little receptors found throughout the brain and throughout your body. They're complicated, they're messy, but they do lots of little jobs. Cannabinoids in your body do lots of little jobs around the place, and they maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is balance, not too hot, not too cold, not too sleepy, not too awake, and so on. And this applies to almost every physiological function. The endocannabinoid system is the reason that medical cannabis works. If it wasn't for the system, the plant would just be a plant. So a big part of what we do as a social enterprise is teach people that.
So what is CBD and what are its benefits?
So CBD is short for cannabidiol, and it's one of the products of the cannabis plant. Now, the cannabis plant it's a natural wonder. It produces hundreds of little chemicals called cannabinoids. Now, these cannabinoids are mostly expressed on the flowers of the plant, and funnily enough, cannabinoids are named after cannabis. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of them, but CBD is the really interesting one. Basically, it's meat and potatoes for your endocannabinoid system. Like I said, there's an endocannabinoid system in your body, and its job is to regulate a vast array of different physiological processes. Things like sleep and mood and inflammation, loads of little things around the body that all add up to you being a healthy, happy human. Now, in your body, you have your own cannabinoids. We call those endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids are produced by your body, and they're produced around the clock, different times of the day, used for different jobs in different parts of the nervous system. Totally fine. We have a few different endocannabinoids, but the main two are called anandamide and 2-AG. 2-AG, under a microscope, looks pretty much the same as CBD, and funnily enough, they behave very similarly in the endocannabinoid system. And essentially, to kind of sum it up, CBD kind of acts a little bit like a dimmer switch. It kind of goes in and it interacts with the endocannabinoid system in such a way as to just dim things, kind of not blur them, not darken them, not necessarily brighten them either, but bring them into balance. The key word is homeostasis. Now, conversely, THC kind of acts like an on switch. It switches signals on, whereas CBD kind of balances things out a little bit. Together they work fantastically. The endocannabinoid system is a marvel. It does all kinds of things, and it does it really, really efficiently. It just so happens that as you get older and as things change in your life, maybe you've not got a great diet, or you've got a lot of stress because of work or something, maybe you've got a genetic condition or a predisposition to a pathology that's going to affect your health in the long term. Your endocannabinoid system has to work overtime. If it works over time, it starts to get tired. It starts to get a little bit depleted. Now, if you had too little vitamin C in your diet, I would tell you to eat an orange. If you needed some potassium, I would tell you to eat a banana. What am I going to tell you to eat if you need cannabinoids? Cannabis. CBD is one of the cannabinoids. It's definitely a very useful one. It's very safe to take. It doesn't get you high. It's not associated with any known public health risks. The trick to getting the most from CBD is to take a little bit of time, take it every day. This is like toothpaste, man. It's under the tongue, wee drop of oil under the tongue a couple of times a day. Make it a routine. You don't just clean your teeth when your teeth feel dirty, and you don't just clean your teeth when you have the dentist. You do it every day.
What is the entourage effect?
The entourage effect simply is that the whole is more valuable than the sum of the parts. The cannabis plant produces hundreds of cannabinoids, and they all interact with your endocannabinoid system. Now, scientists, and bless them, they're doing their best, what they like to do is they like to take apart the plant and boil it down, distill it to its absolute basics, pure quality, powder CBD, isolate it's called. And it's useful. It's consistent, it's accurate and whatever, but it's not complex, and your brain likes complex. Your brain likes things that have got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like earlier we talked about CBD and CBDA. That's one example. But there's also CBG and CBDV and just hundreds and hundreds of cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids, and they all work together. The whole is more valuable than the sum of the parts. A good example of this, specifically when it comes to medical cannabis, would be isolate products, such as made by GW Pharmaceuticals. They have an isolate CBD oil called Epidiolex. It's about 10%, costs about £500 a bottle, thereabouts, I don't know. Compare how well that works to a similar product that hasn't been made from isolate. It's still got all those little planty bits, all those little impurities. The little impurities are what make it work better. It has an extra oomph. Your brain has something to chew on, and your brain likes to chew. Give your brain something complex. So the entourage effect, again, to summarise, the whole is more valuable than the sum of the parts. It's why all the products that we have here are full spectrum products. So they have all these little tiny parts that kind of contribute to the overall effect of the product.
So what would you recommend for somebody just starting out with CBD but is quite nervous because of all the propaganda?
Cool. So we work with a lot of cannabis naive people. There are lots of people who've maybe never taken cannabis before, or even some people who took it years ago or maybe didn't like it or whatever. If you're new to using it, the trick is the golden rule: start low, go slow. This isn't something I've invented. This is something that is common practice across the cannabis world. Start low, go slow. It's a bit like going to the gym. If you're new to the gym, on day one, you are going to suck. It's not going to be good. You're not going to lift anything particularly heavy, and if you do, you're not going to enjoy doing it. But see how you feel after 6 months. See how you feel after going to the gym regularly. You're going to start lifting more. And similar with CBD, most people start with an oil. Oils are good. There's lots of choices, and they're a good balanced way of getting it into your system. The oil goes under your tongue. That's a little shortcut to get it into your bloodstream. Bypasses the liver, gives you a more direct dose. And you're going to start with maybe 1 or 2 drops, just individual drops, just like a little eye drop, and you're going to start there. But CBD is not just a product, it is a process. You start by taking 1 or 2 drops, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, and you gradually increase the number of drops you take until you find that you're somewhere comfortable. Now, if you find that you're taking loads of drops and you're maybe only getting a couple of weeks out of a bottle, that's when I would say go up a strength. You know, it has to be economic. On average, we see customers maybe once a month. They come in once a month to top up. Most people will start off on a low strength oil, something at 2.5%, and that is still the most popular product that we have. 2.5%, they outsell everything else in the shop because you need to start somewhere, and if you've not taken it before, start low, go slow. Nothing's going to go wrong, don't overthink it, just get into the habit of taking it. The routine is what makes it work. That is really important. It's key to getting a good outcome, getting the results that you want. You got to put the effort in, you got to be patient, you got to start low and slowly build it up until you find what works for you.
There are numerous forms of cannabis oil available to buy. What is the difference between hemp oil and CBD oil?
Okay, so we get asked this question a lot. What's the difference between hemp oil and CBD oil? So hemp oil is made from hemp. It's the clues in the name, and it does exactly what it says in the tin. It's oil from hemp. You can buy it in Tesco. You could actually buy like a litre of hemp oil in Tesco for maybe £5 or £6. And essentially, it's kind of like olive oil. You drizzle it on salad, you could put it in a smoothie, you could even make like a moisturizer or something out of it. It is oil made from the seeds of the hemp plant. CBD, however, CBD is a product of the flower of the plant. CBD is not extracted from the seeds, but rather extracted from the bud, the little green bit on top of the cannabis plant. That's where we get CBD. And it's a type of oil, and oftentimes CBD products are made with hemp oil as well. The trick is that they also have CBD. It is the active ingredient that we are looking for. Now, some products, and I warn everyone about this, there are a lot of unscrupulous dealers, particularly on the internet, who sell hemp oil and they dress it up and they make it look like CBD oil, but it's not CBD oil. So again, it's part of the reason why we wanted to be here, is to make sure that people are actually getting a genuine product so that they get a genuine outcome.
On your website, you have mentioned that you provide a cannabis bespoke training. What is this cannabis bespoke training?
So one of the things we're interested in doing as a social enterprise, we want to educate people. We want to inform people about, not just about CBD and THC, but specifically looking at the endocannabinoid system and teaching people about that. Imagine being able to clear up some of the misinformation, because there's a lot out there. I mean, for every And misinformation goes both ways. For every person who says that cannabis is a killer drug, there's someone who's equally wrong saying that it's completely harmless. That's black and white thinking. It's very binary, and it's not true. Cannabis is not completely harmless, but it's not particularly dangerous either. And this is the thing, is we need to be able to have a nuanced conversation that's informed not just by good science, but also informed by experience. Oftentimes cannabis users and the cannabis community are ostracized basically because a lot of what we do is illegal. We break the law quite regularly, and oftentimes we're distrusted. We're seen as unreliable narrators. We have more experience in this plant. We know how it works from experience, and maybe not everyone has the right terminology or the right understanding or vocabulary even to describe what they feel from cannabis or how all this stuff works. So I would love the opportunity to go places and share this information. I want to educate people. I want people to know that they can do this for themselves. So this is something that they can do on their own time. They can take control of their own health by using these products. And it's not a guarantee. It's not going to work for everyone, nor is it going to work the same for everyone, because everybody's different and life is complex. But people should have accurate information. They should get it from a trustworthy source, and essentially that's what we want to be.
So what is CBDA, and how does it differ as a product from CBD?
Okay, so CBDA, cannabidiolic acid. Like I said earlier, there are hundreds of cannabinoids made by the cannabis plant. The main ones are THC and CBD. Those are the famous ones. But weirdly, and this is where it gets weird, so bear with me, the cannabis plant technically doesn't make THC and CBD. First of all, the cannabis plant makes a compound called CBG. And after a little bit of time and a little bit of heat, that CBG breaks down into two other chemicals, one that's called THCA and one that's called CBDA. Now these are raw cannabinoids. That A at the end tells you that it's raw, it's an acid. The acid form cannabinoids. There's THCA, CBDA, CBDVA, hundreds of them. They've all got a raw form. And the acid form cannabinoids, they work in the endocannabinoid system in a similar way. They've just got a different take on it. Some people don't really notice much of a difference, but some people really prefer to have that little bit of added complexity. So for example, in the shop here, we have oils that are mostly CBD. We have oils that are kind of half and half CBD and CBDA, and we even have some oils that are sort of 80% CBDA, 20% CBD. So there's a little sliding scale, and you can try different things. And you never know, you might find that one is just, for whatever reason, it just clicks better with you. Westerners have been using cannabinoids for the last couple of hundred years without really having, even this basic information about THC and CBD. Even 50, 60 years ago, nobody really knew about this. It's a very new science, and it's been held up by the slow progress of legislative reform. There's lots of research being done out there, and there does need to be more done. But in the meantime, I maintain that you can just try it. If you want to do your own research, try an oil with CBD, compare it to an oil with CBDA, see if you notice a difference after a month.
So what is the difference between hemp and cannabis, and why is hemp an important crop both agriculturally and for the community?
Cannabis is not a plant, it is a species of plants, and that means there's lots of different varieties within that species. Broadly we would call them cultivars, cultivated varieties. Hemp refers to a family of cannabis plants that are bred more often for industrial purposes, but essentially they don't contain a lot of THC. Now the kinds of products that you'll see in the coffee shops in Amsterdam or in the dispensaries in California or even being smoked up back alleyways in Edinburgh here, those products are high in THC, and we would normally call that weed or cannabis or whatever. Hemp plants don't get you high. They are cannabis. They're just a type of cannabis that don't necessarily produce an awful lot of cannabinoids. So for example, there are some varieties of cannabis that barely produce a flower. They produce a lot of seeds. Seeds are really healthy, they're a good protein source, but they're not medicine, as it were. Similarly, there are some cannabis plants that are fantastic for making clothes because they make long, strong fibers. There are some types of cannabis that are better growing in colder environments. There are some types of cannabis that are better growing in arid environments. There are lots of different types of cannabis, and they all have a place and a purpose. When it comes to hemp, hemp with most of these, with cannabis that's psychoactive, like obviously you can make gummy bears and roll joints and have bombs and have juice and cake and all. You can do loads of stuff with that, and that's more often the medical side of it. In terms of the industrial applications of cannabis, there's much more we can do with hemp. We can build bridges and houses out of hemp. We can make fiber insulation out of hemp. We can make clothes and paper out of hemp. We can eat it. We can make batteries out of hemp. In a couple of years' time, your iPhone might be running on a hemp battery. Lego are going to be making hemp plastic toys. Like it is a useful industrial resource. It's capturing carbon, and the best thing about it is cleaning the soil. A lot of farmers are starting to incorporate hemp into their crop rotations, because if you grow hemp in your soil, the soil quality improves. Hemp puts nutrients back in the soil whilst also lifting out potential toxins. Fun fact, after the Chernobyl incident, the Chernobyl incident with the nuclear reactor and the radiation and stuff, you'll never guess what plants they planted all around in the exclusion zone. It was hemp. It cleans up the radiation, it soaks it up. And this isn't even just exclusive to the hemp plant. There are loads of organisms that are good at cleaning up toxic waste. Mushrooms are another one. Oyster mushrooms can eat diesel. It's just weird. Plants and fungi are really good at doing these things. And if we start using hemp and start looking at cannabis as not just a drug, we start looking at it as a resource, as a tool, something that is flexible, something that is manipulable. We can change it. If you want a plant that grows 8 feet tall, so you get really long fibers for making fantastic denim out of, yes, you can do that. But similarly, if you want to grow a really short plant that just makes big fat buds for smoking at the weekend, you can do that too. It's not rocket science. It is a plant, and it is versatile. It's a fantastic resource. And one of the little quotes, I've got a quote on the wall from a cannabis activist called Jack Herer, and it's simply this: I don't know if hemp is going to save the world, but it's the only thing that can. We need solutions to climate change, and part of that solution, not the entire solution, but part of the solution is using hemp as an industrial product. Something that's going to clean the air, it's going to clean the soil, and it grows quickly. It's going to be way easier to reseed the countryside with wild hemp than it is to plant 1 billion trees. Trees take decades to grow. Cannabis, weeks.
Thanks to Dan for sharing his knowledge with us, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the content. I'll see you next time.